I used to try to pour my intentions straight from the tin, a messy navigation where the ordinary days begin. The liquid would splash across the table and stain the wood, a wasteful conclusion right exactly where I stood. My energy was spilling in a dozen different lines, a frantic navigation through the complicated signs. I lost half my focus just trying to hit the mark, a frustrating habit in the middle of the dark. But you brought a piece of copper polish to a shine and set it on the opening of this tired life of mine. You gave me a border to catch the stray drops falling down, a steady intervention in a fast and rushing town. The wide mouth gathers all the panic and the haste, routing the momentum so there isn't any waste. You don't just watch me spill my efforts on the ground, you focus my direction till a quiet peace is found. I don't have to worry about missing the narrow goal. You take my messy energy and soothe my weary soul. God in the flow, catching every scattered drop of rain. You don't just watch me spill my efforts on the ground, you focus my direction till a quiet peace is found. I don't have to worry about missing the narrow goal. You take my messy energy and soothe my weary soul. People try to narrow their own minds by shutting down, wearing a defensive and an isolating frown. But closing off the vessel only makes the pressure tight, it ruins the potential of a very quiet night. You leave the top open and accommodate the rush, a brilliant execution in the early morning hush. The copper turns a darker brown with every passing year, a tactile reminder that your patience lingers here. Pour the heavy dark, watch the metal catch, find the narrow glass, strike a quiet match. The liquid settles deep inside the safety of the base. I trust the quiet copper as I navigate this place. I realize that loving is a very steer, a willingness to channel the arrival of the fear. You didn't ask to change the bitter liquid I poured out, you offered a perimeter to mitigate the doubt. I watched the steady stream running smooth into the jar, appreciating the reality of who we really are. The counter is unblemished and the inventory stays, a masterpiece of working through the complicated days. I pull the metal funnel and I rinse it in the sink, grateful for the clarity in every thought I think. Guide in the flow, catching every scattered drop of rain, safe and sound. You don't just watch me spill my efforts on the floor, you route my good intentions through a very open door. The jar is full of meaning and the waste is washed away. I trust your quiet anchor as I wake to face the day. The pour is done, the glass is full, I am safe. Square of heavy timber resting on the bedroom floor. I used to drag the luggage down the hallway in the rush, a careless navigation in the early morning hush. The corners took a beating from the plaster and the stone, a chipping of the edges when I carried it alone. Wood began to splinter and the framing lost its shape, but you brought out a set of yellow metal bent and cast to make the fragile timber of my weary luggage last. You drove the tiny careless things I did. The brass wraps round the vulnerable, exposed 90 degrees. A subtle sort of armor, bringing comfort to my knees. The hallway walls can scrape, but the metal takes the hit, protecting the foundation where my tired memories sit. Guarding the edge, covering the splintered, broken pine. You do not try to stop me from dragging the heavy weight. You wrap my fragile corners and protect me from my fate. I don't have to leave my broken pieces in the hall. You kept the sharpest angles and you save me from the fall. Guarding the edge, covering the splintered, broken pine. You do not try to stop me from dragging the heavy weight. You wrap my fragile corners and protect me from my fate. I don't have to leave my broken pieces in the hall. You kept the sharpest angles and you save me from the fall. People try to handle all their luggage with a glove, an anxious apprehension masking as a steady love. But tiptoeing around the box just makes the muscles ache. It doesn't cure the panic or the habits that we make. You trust the metal bracket to absorb the sudden blow, a realistic tactic for the only road we know. The brass gets tiny scratches, but the timber is secure, a testament to a devotion absolute and pure. Slide the heavy box, hear the metal scrape, save the fragile wood, find a safe escape. The corners hold their integrity beneath the golden shell. I trust the simple hardware and the stories it will tell. I realize that loving is a very tactile guard, a willingness to tolerate the places that are hard. You didn't ask to throw my wooden history away. You offered up protection so the memories could stay. I pulled a heavy trunk across the threshold of the door, unbothered by the friction of the rigid concrete floor. The metal does its job and leaves the contents safe inside, a harbor where my insecurities can softly hide. I run my thumb across the tarnished surface of the brass and feel a steady safety as the evening shadows pass. Guarding the edge, covering the splinters, safe inside. Tactile reassurance, making your affection mine. You do not try to stop me from carrying the weight. You cap my fragile corners and you stabilize my fate. The friction is defeated and the timber holds the line. I rest within the armor, making your affection mine. The box is safe, the edge is strong. I am home.
The sleek and net, the liquid glide across the woven sheet. The gold tip was a messenger, a designated channel for the hours we had spent. But gravity is ruthless to a delicate design. It pulled the metal downward in an unforgiving line. The pen slipped from the table and it struck the wooden floor. A microscopic damage that we couldn't just ignore. The golden nib bent backward at a very awkward slant. A tragic little failure on a solitary plan. I picked it up and tried to write a sentence in the blank. A desperate maneuver on an isolated bank. The metal catches paper and it tears the fibers out, leaving a dark puddle of an undeniable doubt. I try to draft a future but the instrument is flawed, leaving ugly blotch my tired eyes can't leave ignored. You cannot write a story when the channel loses grace. I stare at the destruction in a solitary place. Scratch some future but the instrument is flawed, leaving ugly blotch my tired eyes can't leave ignored. You cannot write a story when the channel loses grace. I stare at the destruction in a solitary place. Tried to bend the goal back to its original degree, to orchestrate a rescue of the fading you and me. But metal holds a memory of the trauma it receives. A permanent, the tired mind believes. We push the conversation trying to smooth the jagged edge, but forcing broken tools just brings you closer to the ledge. The pen refuses letters, leaving only jagged tears, a physical reflection of my solitary fears. Press the golden tip, watch the paper rip, fail to find the word on a sinking ship. The ink is pooling heavy and the message is destroyed. I walk away from writing in an isolated void. I realize that forcing a corrupted pen to flow is volunteering to delete the only truth I know. Love requires an instrument that glides without a fight, not a broken metal tip that lacerates the night. We ruin the foundation by ignoring the decay and watch the vital syllables slowly wash away. I take the heavy barrel and I drop it in the trash, accepting that the history has turned to silent ash. The paper is a dirty and an interrupted white. I turn my collar upward and I step into the night. At a scratch in the page, rolling in the surface of the white. A devastating error in the middle of the night. Trying to stop, trying to stop, time to stop, I try to draft the future but the instrument had failed. I surrender the illusion to the sorrow that prevailed. You cannot write a story when the channel loses grace. I leave the broken metal and I navigate the space. The nib is bent, the page is torn, I am done. Timber has a limit to the pressure it can bear. A microscopic fracture in the solitary air. I drew the heavy bow across the center of the line, expecting of your heartbeat and mine. But a sudden slapping landing in a very quiet place. The maple broke in half and sent the strings against the board. A silent execution of the music I adored. The tension disappears and leaves the silver wire slack, a devastating symptom that I'm never getting back. Losing the resonance, falling flat against the grain. I try to play a melody, but nothing makes a sound. You cannot play a future when the elevation breaks. I stare at the destruction for my own exhausted sakes. Losing the resonance, falling flat against the grain. I try to play a melody, but nothing makes a sound. You cannot play a future when the elevation breaks.
destruction for my own exhausted sakes. I try to push the maple back and wedge it in the gap to manufacture leverage on a solitary map. But broken wooden bridges never hold the proper weight. They crumble in the fingers of an unrewarding fate. We demanded an endurance that the timber couldn't give, ignoring the perimeter where quiet things can live. The strings they paralyze against the dark and empty neck, a visual anatomy of a devastating wreck. Draw the heavy bow, hear the hollow scrape, fail to find the note, no sudden escape. Now I am listening to the echo of the bitter words we said. I realize that forcing a foundation to endure is volunteering entrance to a poison lacking cure. Love requires a structure that is balanced and precise, not an overwhelming pressure paying off an awful price. We broke the vital medium by asking for too much and ruined the capacity of any gentle touch. I dropped the broken maple in the center of the case, accepting the finale of this unrewarding place. The violin is silent and my hands are tired, bare. I walk into the avenue and breathe the winter air, losing the resonance, falling flat against the grain. Time to stop. I try to play a melody, but the timber had to fail. I surrender the illusion of a complicated tale. You cannot play a future when the elevation breaks. I leave the broken instrument and navigate the aches. The bridge is broke, the string is flat, I am done. Strip of rusted metal pushed into the garden dirt, a boundary defending all the quiet places hurt. The grass was overgrowing under every paved stone, a messy navigation in a place I call my own. I tried to pull the weeds but they kept invading back, a disorganized jungle on a solitary track. My mind was just a tangle of an uncontrolled green, the most chaotic landscape my tired eyes had seen. I didn't have a border to separate the pain, I let the worry spread in the middle of the rain. But you walked out and brought a heavy roll of rusted steel, a practical solution for the panic that I feel. You drove the metal downward and cut a steady line, separating all the chaos from the things that should be mine. The invasive roots are stopped against the rigid iron wall. You organized the art and saved me from the fall, framing the edge, giving all the wilderness a shape, a designated border and a beautiful escape. You do not let my panic overgrow the quiet path. You sink the metal deep into the complicated math. I don't have to pull the weeds without a place to stand. You give my tired spirit a perimeter of land, all the wilderness a shape, a designated border and a beautiful escape. You do not let my panic overgrow the quiet path. You sink the metal deep into the complicated math. I don't have to pull the weeds without a place to stand. You give my tired spirit a perimeter of land. Let the boundaries decay and fall apart, and wonder why the wilderness invades the human heart. But drawing up a line requires a dedicated strength, the willingness to measure out the unforgiving length. The steel becomes a dark and an undeniable red, a visual translation of the honest words we said. I walk along the path and see the concrete looking clear, grateful for the maintenance you implemented here. Drive the metal down, stop the spreading root, clear the walking path, find a steady route. The garden has a shape and the chaos fades away. I trust the quiet metal as I navigate the day. I realized that loving is a geometric grace, a willingness to define a very vulnerable space. You didn't have to pave the entire yard in stone, you just made sure the grass stayed exactly in its zone. I dropped my heavy shoulders and I breathed the morning air, protected by the boundary you established there. The rain begins to fall but the dirt remains in place, a masterpiece of order in an ordinary space. I trace the rusted edge with the bottom of my shoe and walk into the house, relying quietly on you. Framing the edge, giving all the wilderness a shape. Safe inside a designated border and a beautiful escape. Nowhere to hide. You not let my panic overgrow the quiet path. You sink the metal deep and organize the aftermath. The concrete remains clear and the boundary is secure. I trust your quiet logic and the love I know is pure. The edge holds, the path is clear. I am home.
Yeah. A heavy box of iron sitting on the patio, waiting for the evening and the cooling wind to blow. We used to light a candle on the surface of the wood. The drafts would come around and snuff the tiny orange spark, leaving us abandoned in the freezing bitter dark. My hope was just a flicker in a very hostile breeze, a solitary victim falling softly to his knees. But you brought out a lantern casting heavy midnight black, a rugged intervention on a very fading track. You set the little candle in the center of the base and locked the metal door to guard the vulnerable space. The iron has a dozen little holes to let the oxygen in, a calculated balance where the better days begin. The wind attempts to blow but hits the solid metal shield. The fire dances safely on a designated field. Anchor in the flame, projecting shadows on the wall. A quiet intervention to eradicate the fall. You don't just leave my passion naked in the open air. You put a heavy cage to keep it burning steady there. I do not have to panic when the weather turns to gray. You intercept the tempest and you make the fire stay. Anchor in the flame, projecting shadows on the wall. A quiet intervention to eradicate the fall. You don't just leave my passion naked in the open air. You put a heavy cage to keep it burning steady there. I do not have to panic when the weather turns to gray. You intercept the tempest and you make the fire stay. People try to block the wind by closing every door and wonder why the fire doesn't flicker anymore. But starving out the oxygen will murder the intent, a tragic misdirection of the energy they spent. You leave the little holes to let the necessary air, a sort of magic and a dedicated care. The light escapes the iron in a fascinating glow, the most reliable devotion I will ever know. Lock the metal door, watch the orange burn, trust the heavy cast, see the shadows turn. The wind's pushing violently, but can I reach the core? I am resting in the safety I had never felt before. I realized that loving is an architectural choice, a willingness to shelter my exhausted quiet voice. You didn't have to strike a brand new match, start anew. You took the fragile ember and protected it for you. I lean against the timber and I watch the pattern dance, a mesmerizing motion in a solitary trance. The cold is trapped outside the heavy layer of the steel. I pull the collar upward and validate the things I feel. I walk into the evening with my posture standing tall. I trust the quiet lantern, and I do not fear the fall. Safe and safe on the ground. You do not leave my passion naked in the open air. You build a heavy harbor and you keep it burning there. The wind is just a whisper and the light is shining pure. I trust your quiet armor and the love I know is secure. The
black and silver camera resting on the wooden desk. A vessel for recording an undeniable risk. We loaded up the cartridge with a roll of plastic tape to capture all the moments of our intricate escape. The lens was always open and the battery was bright. A dedicated archive of the fading summer light. But looking back, what takes a functional and moving gear? A mechanism capable of mitigating fear. I pushed the plastic button just to rewind all the days, to rescue the affection from the complicated haze. But the motor hit a snag and made a terrible loud grind, a physical reflection of a solitary mind. The tape was wrapped around a spinning cylinder of steel, a terrifying ending to the memories I feel. The ribbon is corrupted and the playback screen is dark. I stare at the disaster of an extinguished spark, unspooling the end, tangling the plastic in the core. I try to push rewind, but the mechanism fails, leaving a disjointed mess on complicated trails. You cannot play history when the instrument is dead. I stare at the distortion of the bitter words we said. Oh, unspooling the end, tangling the plastic in the core. Let it drop. I try to push rewind, but the mechanism fails. Oh, leaving a disjointed mess on complicated trails. You cannot play history when the instrument is dead. Oh, I stare at the distortion of the bitter words we said. I tried to pull the cartridge to untangle all the mess, to orchestrate a rescue from a suffocating stress. But pulling fragile plastic tears the images apart, a devastating error for an isolated heart. We forced the conversation, trying to retrieve the past, expecting the affection to miraculously last. The machine is a paperweight, an uncooperative ghost, a cool and heavy mockery of what I needed most. Press the rewind key, hear the offer scrape, fail to find the view, no sudden escape. The history is buried in a paralyzed machine. I am walking from the saddest wreckage I have seen. I realize that forcing an extraction of the past is tearing up the boundary that was engineered to last. Love requires a lens that points toward an open road, not a broken archive carrying an anxious load. We ruined the foundation by demanding it to yield, and shattered the perimeter of a solitary field. I popped the plastic cover and I snapped the ribbon out, accepting the finale of the suffocating doubt. I leave the broken camera on the surface of the pine. I turn my collar upward and I leave the old design. Unspooling the end, tangling the plastic in the core. Let it drop. I try to push rewind, but the mechanism failed. I surrender the illusion to the sorrow that prevailed. You cannot play history when the instrument is dead. I step out of the doorway and I clear my tired head. The tape is torn, screen is black. I am done. The bed is flat, the ground is cold. I am done. We pumped a heavy volume till the surface was secure, a temporary comfort that was confident and pure. The rubber valves are fragile and they fell without a sound, the quiet little trees and pushing downward to the ground. I laid upon the surface in the middle of the dark, expecting the protection of a solitary spark. But a fabric started its terrifying leakage. The fabric started sagging and my shoulders hit the stone, a miserable realization I was sleeping here alone. The oxygen escapes and leaves the vinyl flat and gray. I stare at the disaster, at the breaking of the day. Stripped of the air, sinking to the freezing jagged stone. I try to plug the valve, but the mechanism fails, leaving me unprotected on these complicated trails. You cannot rest a few
future when the cushion is destroyed. I stare at the deflation in an isolated void. Stripped of the air, sink into the freezing jagged stone. I try to plug the valve, but the mechanism fails, leaving me unprotected on these complicated trails. You cannot rest the future when the cushion is destroyed. I stare at the deflation in an isolated void. I tried to push the plastic cap to seal the leaking hole, to orchestrate a rescue for my weary, empty soul. But broken rubber mechanisms tolerate no fix. A terrifying outcome in a bag of shallow tricks. We relied upon a boundary that wasn't built to last, a devastating mirror of our complicated past. The mattress is a puddle of an uncooperative blue, a visual translation of the infamy in you. Push the plastic cap, hear the quiet hiss, fail to hold the air in the fragile bliss. The cushion is deleted and the rocks begin to bite. I am standing in the wreckage of a solitary night. I realize a force in a depleted broken shell is volunteering entrance to an isolated hell. Love requires a buffer that is solid and secure, not a leaking apparatus dragging on the muddy floor. We ruin the foundation by ignoring the decay and watch the vital oxygen just slowly slip away. I drag the ruined vinyl to the garbage by the gate, accepting the arrival of an unrewarding fate. I do not need to sleep upon a broken flat design. I walk into the avenue and draw a heavy line. Stripped of the air, sink into the freezing jagged stone. Let it drop, I try to plug the valve, but the mechanism failed. I surrender the illusion to the sorrow that prevailed. You cannot rest the future when the cushion is destroyed. I walk away completely and I navigate the void. The bed is flat, the ground is cold. I am done. Yeah. A thick apron of cowhide hanging on the workshop door, made to face the fire and the embers on the floor. The grinding wheel spins and throws a blinding orange heat, a dangerous environment where iron margins meet. I used to stand unshielded in the middle of the room, absorbing all the burns and anticipating doom. My shirt was full of holes from the flying jagged steel, the visual translation of the damage I would feel. I winced at every flash and kept a distance from the spark, a timid navigation in the center of the dark. But you draped the rugged fabric right across my tired chest, a barrier of safety where my weary bones could rest. You tied the nylon straps around my shoulders and my spine, a tactile intervention making the protection mine. The leather takes the impact of the rising angry flame. You give me a defense and you dignify my name. Taking the sparks, standing in the center of the glow, a steady insulation for the only life I know. You do not stop the grinding or demand I leave the space. You wrap me in a shield and protect my fragile place. I do not have to flinch when the flying embers bite. You give me a foundation in the middle of the night. Oh, taking the sparks, standing in the center of the glow, a steady insulation for the only life I know. You do not stop the grinding or demand I leave the space. You wrap me in a shield and protect my fragile place. I do not have to flinch when the flying embers bite. You give me a foundation in the middle of the night. Oh, people try to dodge the work and hide away in fear,
avoiding all the friction that is escalating here. But shaping raw material demands a bit of pain, a willingness to navigate the fire and the rain. The apron gets a little charred from catching all the debris, a testament to all the care you dedicate to me. I lean into the workbench and I turn the motor on, protected from the panic till the breaking of the dawn. Tie the leather strap, face the glowing wheel, let the sparks fly up, guard the things I feel. The armor is a rugged and an unassuming friend. I trust the thick perimeter until the very end. I realize that loving is a very tactile guard, a willingness to occupy a space that feels so hard. You didn't ask to shut the shop and throw the tools away. You offered a protection so the artisan could stay. I run the grinder smooth against the surface of the blade, appreciating all the interventions you have made. The room is smelling deep, a melting iron in the dust. I wear your dedication as an undeniable trust. I wipe my dirty hands and take the apron off my spine. I stand inside the workshop and I know the piece is mine. Taking the sparks, standing in the center of the safe, and steady insulation for the only light from nowhere to hide. You do not stop the grinding or demand I leave this space. You wrap me in a shield and protect my fragile place. The fire dances wildly, but my center is secure. I trust your quiet armor, and the love I know is pure. Fades, the steel is smooth, I am safe. A black iron kettle sitting on the burning stove. The winter air is brittle and it scrapes against the skin. We run the indoor heater till the oxygen is dry. A suffocating climate underneath the winter sky. I used to wake up coughing from the arid, empty room, a harsh and bitter symptom of the January gloom. My lungs were feeling ragged and my throat was like a stone, a physical reminder I was fighting it alone. But you brought a little water and you filled the iron core, a remedy I never thought to ask about before. You set it on the cast iron, heating up the wood, a functional oasis standing right where we both stood. The heat boils the water and the vapor rises up, a soothing mist escaping from a heavy vapor in the chill, breathing life into the arid air. You do not turn the heater off or let the winter in. You soften up the climate where the better days begin. I do not have to struggle for a comfortable breath. You turn the dry environment away from quiet death. Vapor in the chill, breathing life into the arid air. You do not turn the heater off or let the winter in. You soften up the climate where the better days begin. I do not have to struggle for a comfortable breath. You turn the dry environment away from quiet death. From winter and they book a southern flight, leaving all the freezing and the agonizing night. But you embrace the season and you modify the room. You bring a humid layer to eradicate the doom. The windows gather moisture from the rising steady steam, a visual reflection of a collaborative dream. I sit up on the rug and let my shoulders drop an inch, escaping from the dryness and the agonizing pinch. Hear the water boil, see the white mist rise, soothe the tired lungs under winter skies. The dry air is defeated by a patient rolling cloud, a statement of devotion that is never spoken loud. I realize that loving is an atmospheric shift, a willingness to mitigate the continental drift. You didn't ask to change the fundamental freezing cold. You offered the perimeter that we could bravely hold. I close my eyes and breathe the gentle moisture in the dark, a soothing respiration wrapped around a vital spark. The frost is creeping slowly on the outside of the pane, but we are sitting safely in a manufactured rain. I lean my tired head against the cushion on the floor, grateful for the remedy. I couldn't ask for more. Vapor in the chill, breathing life into the arid air. You do not turn the heater off or let the winter in. You soften up the climate where the better days begin. The steam is rolling
quiet moisture as I wait out the storm. The kettle hums, the air is soft, I am breathing.
But time degrades the barrier and dries the rubber paste. A silent deterioration, acting in a subtle haste. The sun baked the adhesive till it turned to brittle chalk. A crumbling found the ordinary walk. I ran my finger over it and felt the jagged edge. A microscopic canyon on a very narrow ledge. The wind began to whistle through the fractures in the seal, erasing all the comfort that I used to safely feel. The barrier is broken and the freezing air comes in. I shiver in the center where the tragedies begin. The leaking draft blowing through the ruined brittle seam. I try to block the weather but the silicone is dead, leaving just the echo of the bitter words we said. You cannot hold a boundary when the edges turn to dust. I stare at the destruction of a compromised trust. I stare at the destruction of a compromised trust. Yeah, the leaking draft blowing through the ruined brittle seam. I try to block the weather but the silicone is dead, leaving just the echo of the bitter words we said. You cannot hold a boundary when the edges turn to dust. I stare at the destruction of a compromised trust. I tried to press some masking tape to cover up the gap, to orchestrate a rescue on a devastated map. But taping over damage doesn't cure the rotting core. It only keeps the winter from invading anymore. We ignore the maintenance and let the window rot, refusing to preserve the very only thing we got. The curtains flood a valley from the penetrating breeze, a cool and constant reminder that brings me to my knees. Touch the crumble white, feel the bitter cold. Watch the curtain move, watch the end unfold. The room is losing temperature and nothing brings it back. I am standing in the wreckage of a solitary track. I realize that forcing an exhausted broken line is volunteering entrance to a terrible design. Love acquires a ceiling that is flexible and strong, not a dry and chalky powder when the season goes too long. We starve the open dialogue and let the weather win it, ruin the perimeter of the air we were in. I drop the ruined tape into the garbage by the door, accepting I won't try to fix the window anymore. I pack my heavy sweater and I walk into the hall, a quiet resignation as the winter shadows fall. The leaking draft blowing through the ruined brittle seam. Let it dry. They try to block the weather but the silicone was dead. I surrender the illusion and I clear my tired head. You cannot hold a boundary when the edges turn to dust. I walk into the avenue and leave the broken trust. The seal is broke, the draft comes in, I am done.
A thick and silver cable when we slapped the wooden neck. A fast and reckless journey heading for a sudden wreck. I pulled the silver wire with a frantic kick. The desperate ship, the tension
The tension hit a limit that the metal couldn't take. A catastrophic error that my weary hands would make. The cable snapped in pieces with an agonizing crack. A violent separation I am never getting back. The vibration dies in silence and the timbre loses tone. I am standing with an instrument unplayable and prone. You cannot play a foundation when the wire tears apart. I stare at the destruction of a disconnected heart. You cannot play a foundation when the wire tears apart. I stare at the destruction of a disconnected heart. I try to tie the metal. I try to tie the metal. I try to tie the metal. I try to tie the metal, but the copper is too thick. A miserable bandage making tired stomachs sick. The fix and broken tension leaves a knot upon the wire. A fatal interruption to a musical desire. We forced our expectations past the tolerance of sound and drove the fragile instrument directly in the ground. The jazz is just a memory, an uncooperative ghost, a cruel and empty mockery of what I needed most. Pluck the empty air, hear the hollow sigh. Fail to find the groove underneath the sky. The foundation is demolished and the lie. I walk away from playing as the melodies die. I realize that forcing an affection past the breaking line is guaranteeing damage to the original design. Love requires attention that is manageable, real, not an overwhelming pressure that destroys the things we feel. We broke the vital frequency by asking for too much and ruined the capacity of any gentle touch. I leaned the heavy instrument against the studio wall, accepting the finale and the sadness of it all. I leave the broken wire curling useless on the wood. I walk into the avenue and leave the place we stood. I tried to pluck a rhythm, but the lowest string was dead. I surrender the illusion and I clear my tired head. You cannot play a foundation when the wire tears apart. I step out of the studio and save my weary heart. The string is cut, the bass is silent, I am done.
A sliver of pine wedged tight against the window glass. A quiet intervention letting all the weather pass. I used to lay awake and listen to the frantic shake, a miserable rattle that the winter storms would make. The glass vibrated loosely in the center of the frame. My mind was shaking with the rhythm of the rushing air. A fragile sort of window opening to dark despair. I thought the pain would shatter from the pressure of the wind, exposing all the lonely places where my soul had been. But you brought in a piece of timber cut into a slant, a remedy for every single panic I would plant. You drove it in the gap between the window and the sill, a physical translation of your understanding will. The rattling is silenced by a steady piece of pine. You fortify the borders, making your affection mine. The wooden restraint, keeping all the shaking in the dark, a designated harbor for a complicated spark. You do not try to stop the wind or change the winter freeze. You anchor down the window and bring panic to its knees. I do not have to flinch at every gust that hits the glass. You wedge the timber firmly and you let the weather pass. The wooden restraint, keeping all the shaking in the dark, a designated harbor for a complicated spark. You do not try to stop the wind or change the winter freeze. You anchor down the window and bring panic to its knees. I do not have to flinch at every gust that hits the glass. You wedge the timber firmly and you let the weather pass. People try to buy a thicker glass to kill the noise, a superficial tactic, losing all the quiet poise. But heavy pains will shatter when the building starts to shift, a devastating casualty of continental drift. You trust the simple friction of a customized design, a tiny piece of leverage drawing a defensive line. The bedroom is a quiet and insulated space, a masterpiece of comfort in an ordinary place. Push the timber down, stop the sudden shake, silence all the dread for my tired sake. The storm is blowing sideways, but the window is secure. I trust the simple mechanism that is absolute and pure. I realize that loving is a very subtle wedge, a willingness to stabilize a terrifying ledge. You didn't ask to board the window up and hide the view. You kept the vision open and you made the framing true. I watched the heavy snow fall through the center of the pane, protected from the panic and insulated from pain. The timber takes the pressure and the glass refuses breaks, a testament to all the quiet choices that you make. I lean against the radiator, feeling steady heat, grateful for the anchor in the middle of defeat. The wooden restraint keeping all the shaking in the dark, safe and designated harbor for a complicated spark. Oh, and you do not try to stop the wind or change the winter freeze. You anchor down the window and alleviate the tease. The shake is gone, frame is tight, I am safe.
A galvanized container sitting on the basement floor, a quiet little sentry by the heavy wooden door. The past was leaking poison on the present that we made, a terrifying shadow in a complicated shade. But you walked down the stairs and put the bucket in the way to intercept the damage at the closing of the day. The water hits the metal with a satisfying ping, a quiet sort of rhythm changing every little thing. The tin absorbs the runoff and it keeps the floorboards dry. You offer a foundation underneath the weeping sky, catching the rust, swallowing the bitter, toxic tear. You don't just patch the ceiling or demand the water stop. You place a steady vessel and collect the fallen drop. I don't have to ruin the foundation of the room. You take my heavy sorrow and eradicate the gloom, catching the rust, swallowing the bitter, toxic tear. You don't just patch the ceiling or demand the water stop. You place a steady vessel and collect the falling drop. I don't have to ruin the foundation of the room. You take my heavy sorrow and eradicate the gloom. People try to close the valve and shut the water out, to orchestrate a rescue from an undeniable doubt. But shutting off the water doesn't fix a rusty pipe. It only hides the symptom of a suffocated gripe. You let the system system, empty out the poison it contained, ensuring the integrity of everything remained. The bucket turns a darker brown with every passing week, a testament to giving me the sanctuary I seek. Hear the hollow ping, watch the waterfall, keep the timber dry, you preserve it all. The floor is uncorrupted and the damage is undone. I trust the quiet metal as we wait upon the sun. I realize that loving is a willingness to catch a practical solution for an unpredictable match. You didn't ask to rip the plumbing out and start anew. You caught the toxic runoff and you let the light shine through. I carry out the bucket and I empty it outside, releasing all the shadows where my insecurities hide. The basement smells like cedar and the puddles are erased, a masterpiece of working in a very messy place. I set the empty vessel back upon the designated spot and smile at the reality of everything we got. Catching the rust, swallowing the bitter, toxic, safe inside. Dedicated harbor for my complicated fear. Do not patch the ceiling or demand the water stop. You place a steady vessel and collect the falling drop. The timber is unblemished and the panic fades away. I trust your quiet haven as I navigate the day. The bucket holds, the floor is safe, I am home.
Folded sheet of paper sitting on the dashboard tray, a navigation method for a complicated day. We bought it at a station on the border of the state to chart a steady journey and negotiate our fate. The colored lines of highway painted yellow, blue, and red, a visual translation of the quiet words we said. We opened up the grid to find a harbor in the west, a dedicated haven where a weary soul could rest. But paper takes a beating when you fold it every night, a fragile little document exposed to morning light. We crease the intersections, trying hard to plan the route, a constant calculation feeding on a rising doubt. I pulled the heavy parchment to examine where we stood and watched the center tear apart exactly where we would. The destination separates across a jagged, empty gap. I cannot find the highway on this isolated map. The broken grid tearing at the center of the fold. I try to read the junction, but the avenue is gone, leaving me to wonder how I quietly carry on. You cannot trace a future when the paper falls apart. I stare at the destruction of a disconnected heart. The broken grid tearing at the center of the fold. I try to read the junction, but the avenue is gone, and leaving me to wonder how I quietly carry on. You cannot trace a future when the paper falls apart. I stare at the destruction of a disconnected heart. I try to tape the pieces back to reconstruct the
town to keep the heavy sorrow from dragging my spirit down. But tape obscures the letters and it makes the vision blur. A messy illustration of exactly who we were. We traced the same dilemma till the fibers had to give, refusing to acknowledge how we actually should live. The map is just a puzzle with a missing middle square. A terrifying silence in the quiet autumn air. Hold the torn edges, watch the highway fade, lose the destination in the choices made. The route is unreadable and the journey has to end. I turn away forever from my fading, quiet friend. I realize that forcing a corrupted map to lead is volunteering entrance for the memory to bleed. Love requires a direction that is durable and plain, not a fragile piece of paper washing out inside the rain. We ruined the foundation by obsessing on the plan and shattered the perimeter of a solitary man. I dropped the ruined map into the garbage by the road, accepting the reality of my exhausted load. I turn the car around and leave the passenger behind. I drive into the avenue and clear my tired mind. The broken grid tearing at the center of the let it dry. To read the junction but the avenue was dead. I surrender the illusion and I clear my tired head. You cannot trace a future when the paper falls apart. I walk into the morning and I save my weary heart. The map is torn, the road is lost. I am done.
A blackened plastic cylinder holding up the metal frame, a silent little casualty in a complicated game. We tried to pull the suit into an absolute align to reinforce the boundary of your history and mine. I placed my tired fingers on the center of the core, expecting the resistance that I felt the day before. I twisted down the handle with an arrogant demand, ignoring the fragility I couldn't understand. The metal slipped and rounded off the corners of the thread, a physical translation of the bitter words we said. The tool just spins in circles without catching on a side, a quiet little trap where the weary shadows hide. The grip is gone entirely, the intersection dead, a visual reality of everything I dread. The handle rotates freely inside the ruined face, a solitary motion in a devastated space. The strip thread spinning in an empty, quiet void, a tragic realization that the connection is destroyed. I tried to turn the lever, but the metal refused its catch. We burned away the friction and eradicated the match. You cannot tighten up a bond when the corners turn to dust. I stare at a destruction of a solitary trust. The strip thread spinning in an empty, quiet void, a tragic realization that the connection is destroyed. I tried to turn the lever, but the metal refused its catch. We burned away the friction and eradicated the match. You cannot tighten up a bond when the corners turn to dust. I stare at a destruction of a solitary trust. I tried to to push a rubber band inside the empty gap, to manufacture leverage on a solitary map. But adding superficial tricks to broken heavy steel is a cowardly avoidance of the panic that I feel. We force the conversation past the tolerance of the joint, demanding a perfection to an isolated point. The screw is resting permanently, trapped inside the gear. A terrifying lesson that validates my fear. Twist the plastic arm, feel the hollow spin, accept the quiet end where the tears begin. The angle is corrupted and the symmetry is gone. I do not have the friction to continue holding on. I realize that forcing a connection past the line is volunteering to destroy the original design. Love requires a mutual and delicate response, not a heavy-handed wrenching in an isolated trance. We ruin the foundation by demanding it to yield, and shattered the perimeter of a solitary field. I pull my hand away and drop the handle on the floor, accepting I will never turn the mechanism, or the stand is hanging awkwardly unfixable and sad. I walk away from fighting for the history we had. The strip thread spinning in an empty quiet void, tragic realization that the connection is destroyed. Now I try to turn the lever, but the intersection failed. I surrendered the illusion to the sorrow that prevailed. You cannot tighten up a bond when the corners turn to dust. I drop the broken instrument and leave the broken trust. Thread is wrong, grip is lost, I am done.
A flat circle of bark resting on the marble top, a rugged little surface causing everything to stop. I used to read the recipes upon a wire frame, a slippery endeavor in a complicated game. The metal legs would slide across the polished freezing gray, erasing the instructions in the middle of the day. My mind was just a frantic slide across a sheet of ice, a dizzying momentum paying off an awful price. I couldn't find a focus or maintain a steady line, a terrifying reality I used to think was mine. But you brought in the coaster cut from natural earthy brown and placed it underneath the rack to weigh the panic down. The wire dug its heels into the porous yielding grain, a solid intervention washing out the nervous pain. The friction grabs the metal and secures the written word, a quiet reassurance that my tired voice is heard. The cork anchor gripping on the slippery cold stone, a tactile intervention in a place I walked alone. You do not try to melt the rock or change the counterbase. You offer a foundation of every frantic space. I do not have to chase the flying pages anymore. You stabilize the reading right above the kitchen floor. The cork anchor gripping on the slippery cold stone, a tactile intervention in a place I walked alone. You do not try to melt the rock or change the counterbase. You offer a foundation in a very frantic space. I do not have to chase the flying pages anymore. You stabilize the reading right above the kitchen floor. People try to bake without a designated spot, losing all the measurements and everything they got. But precision is a science needing stable, quiet air, a willingness to tolerate the heavy shadows there. You trust the simple nature of a dedicated pad, erasing all the errors and the habits that I had. The book remains open and the paragraphs are clear, a masterpiece of navigating every rise and fear. Set the metal down, feel the surface catch, read the honest text, strike the quiet match. The marble is forgiven when the friction is applied. I trust the simple haven where my weary spirits hide. I realize that loving is a very tactile grip, a willingness to rectify a devastating slip. You didn't ask to clear the room or build a brand new shelf. You slid the cord beneath me and you saved me from myself. I poured a heavy flower and I read the final line. A steady integration making your affection mine. The kitchen smells of cinnamon and roasting winter pine. A warm and steady atmosphere I finally define. I wipe my dusty fingers and I leave the counter space, protected by the gravity you brought into this place. The Cork Anchor, gripping on the slippery cold stone, safe inside. A tactile intervention in a place I walked alone, nowhere to hide. You do not try to melt the rock or change the counter base. You stabilize the panic and you offer me a grace. The metal holds the tension and the book refuses sliding. I trust the quiet haven where my tired hopes are hiding. Is that holds the print is clear, I am home.
Stick in the corner. A black and heavy cylinder point over to the roof. A mechanism waiting to provide a little proof. The summer heat had settled like a blanket on the chest, a suffocating ending on your rest. I sat up on the sofa, sweating in the stagnant air, a miserable captive in a very dark despair. The open window couldn't catch a single passing breeze, a failure of the weather bringing me onto my knees. My lungs were breathing heavy in a toxic empty room, a claustrophobic beginning in the middle of the gloom. But you brought in a turbine and you set it on the floor, and plugged the heavy cable in the socket by the door. You turned the dial upwards to the maximum degree, and pushed the frozen oxygen directly onto me. The motor hums a steady narration, is lifting all the stagnant air directly off the ground. Breaking the heat, pushing the current, washing out the heavy summer gray, and my candle revival, driving all the heat away. Hey. You don't just sit and suffer in a suffocating space. Hey. You bring a steady motion to an isolated place. I do not have to choke upon the stillness of the night. You circulate the oxygen and make the shadows bright. Pushing the current, washing out the heavy summer gray, and the candle revival, driving all the heat away. Hey. You don't just sit and suffer in a suffocating space. Hey. You bring a steady motion to an isolated place. I do not have to choke upon the stillness of the night. You circulate the oxygen and make the shadows bright. Poison the current, washing out the heavy summer gray. Poison the current, washing out the heavy summer gray. People wave a paper fan to mitigate the sweat, a temporary bandage on an undeniable regret. But you create a vortex that envelops all the room, a systematic routing of the miserable doom. The breeze hits the ceiling and cascades across the wall, a refreshing navigation of the tragedy of all. I feel the moisture drying on the surface of my skin, a tangible reminder of the era we are in. Turn the plastic dial, hear the sudden hum, feel the moving air, let the rescue come. The atmosphere is bending to the power of the blade. I rest inside the haven that you're in. Intervention made. I realize that loving is a constant act. It breeds a willingness to mitigate a devastating freeze. You didn't ask to leave the house or find a cooler town. You stayed inside the center and you brought the fever down. I lean back on the cushion and I breathe the current deep, prepared to find the quiet of a necessary sleep. The turbine is a sentinel defending my retreat, a victory secured against a miserable defeat. I trace the black plastic and I offer up a smile. I know the steady motion is going to last a while. Pushing the current, washing out the heavy summer gray, and my candle revive all the heat away, heat away. You don't just sit and suffer in a suffocating space. You circulate the oxygen and pushing the crash. Pushing the crash.
A little slip of paper resting on the windowsill, a victim of the summer and a quiet creeping chill. We got it from a diner on a Tuesday afternoon, a memory we thought that we were visiting so soon. The black ink was a record of the coffee and the pie, a physical translation of an ordinary sky. But thermal paper doesn't like the ultraviolet ray. It acts as an eraser, pulling history away. I left it on the timber, exposed to all the light, ignoring the slow vanishing happening in sight. I picked a little rectangle up to read the heavy print, to find a confirmation or a subtle quiet hint. But the surface was an empty and intimidating white, a phantom of the diner in the middle of the night. The transaction is deleted by the chemistry of sun, a tragic illustration that the narrative is done. I try to read the history, but the words are washed away, a silent execution of an ordinary day. You cannot prove a promise when the document is dead. I stare at the distortion of the quiet words we said. I try to read the history, but the words are washed away. Silent execution of an ordinary day. You cannot prove a promise when the document is dead. I stare at the distortion of the quiet words we said. I tried to hold the paper at a very tilted angle, to rescue some reality from this forgotten tangle. But ghosts do not negotiate when sunlight steals the dye. They vanish in the quiet of an unapologetic sky. We thought our steady promise was an undeniable fact, but neglected all the weather on the fading lonely track. The slip is just a meaningless and blank deserted square, a visual confession of a quiet dark despair. Stare at the blank page, rub the empty white. The memory is gone, fading in the night. The proof is just an echo of a very distant past. We built a weak foundation that was never meant to last. I realized that clinging to a fabricated trace is volunteering for an empty in the hollow space. Love requires a presence, not a fading printed line. You cannot find a future in a sun-depleted sign. We left the good intentions sitting open on the wood and sacrificed the memory of exactly where we stood. I crumpled the blank paper in a tiny useless ball and tossed it in the garbage, disregarding it all. I do not need a receipt to validate the pain. I turn my collar upward and I step into the rain. The words I surrender the illusion to the flying of the birds. You cannot prove a promise when the document is dead. I drop the ruined paper and I walk the street instead. The paper is blank, the ink is gone. I am leaving. Tiny nylon triangle left sitting on the grill. I set it on the mesh and turned my tire back away, ignoring how the vacuum tubes were radiating gray. The heat rose up in waves against the belly of the pig, a quiet transformation making the foundation sick. I reached to grab the plastic just to strike a final chord, to end the frantic session on a heavy wooden board. But my thumb found an erratic in a wavy twisted shape. The nylon had surrendered and allowed the foam to drape. The sharp point was a blunt and curled up little mess, a visual reflection of an undeniable stress. You cannot strum a wire with a melted warp. This snags against the metal and it ruins the line. I try to push the plastic but it trips upon the fret. You cannot make a melody when the instrument is flawed. I stare at
the destruction that I carelessly ignored. The warped edge, catching on the silver guitar string. I try to push the plastic, but it trips upon the fret, leaving a dissonance. You cannot make a melody when the instrument is flawed. I stare at the destruction that I carelessly ignored. I try to bend the nylon back against the wooden dash to iron out the wrinkles of this complicated wrist, but plastic holds a memory of the fire it consumed. It snaps if you attempt to pull it from the heated tomb. We put our raw affection on a burning hot extreme, expecting it to tolerate the pressure of the dream, but running in emotion past the limits of its core ensures you cannot use the tiny fragment anymore. Strum the heavy string, hear the awful sound. Snap the twisted plastic, falling to the ground. The heat destroyed the boundary, and the shape is totally dead. I am standing in the silence of the bitter words we said. I realize that loving takes a moderate approach. You cannot put the fire in the center of the coach. We threw our wrong intentions on a radiating plate and watched the chemistry dissolve into a bitter fate. I flick the room and pick into the center of the trash, accepting that the history is turned to silent ash. The guitar is standing silent by the corner of the wall. I unplug the heavy cable and I let the music fall. I cannot play a future with a tool that lost its edge. I walk into the avenue and step off of the ledge. The warped edge, catching on the silver guitar string. Let it break, let it. I tried to push the plastic, but it tripped upon the fret. I leave the broken instrument and wash away regret. You cannot make a melody when the foundation is destroyed. I switch the heavy power off and step into the void.